Hey everyone, this video is a compilation of over 50 spring projects from previous videos that I have put together for you all, and I hope that you enjoy them. We're going to start out with this bird that I thrifted. It's a beautiful black bird, but I go ahead and give it a good coat of white chalk paint. I'm going to be adding this IOD transfer from the Brocante transfer pad, and I'm cutting this up. And this just pops off so easy onto this bird. Once I get this down and on here, I'm going to piece another part to this. And you can't really tell that I have cut this in half. Just make sure when you're using your transfers that you can cut them into pieces and use them on different projects. They don't have to be used how they're laid out on the pages. I know when I did this video originally, I had a lot of people comment that they never thought to use that clock in parts, and they hadn't used it yet, but they were going to use it in parts now. So we're just going to go ahead and sand this just a little bit and give it a little bit of distress to bring that black back through. And what I want to do with this is age it. I mean, the white is definitely beautiful, but I'm going to be white waxing this really well because I want to put some dark wax on this, and I don't want the dark wax to be overpowering. So if you clear wax it or white wax it first, you're going to give a barrier, and that dark wax, although it's going to get down those crevices, you're going to be able to wipe some of that back. What I really want to happen with this is that I get some gray down in the crevices, and that's going to happen with the black and the white wax mixture. Once I get the black wax all over it, I'm going to wipe that back, and then I'm going to have the look that I want. I will go ahead and paint the bottom of that just to blend it in with the white on top once I finish this top off. Now you guys will have to let me know in the comments below what you think about this bird. Did you like the black better? This next project is really easy. I actually have already started on it. It's a vintage cake pan, and it's 2 parts. I've added some white wax to make it kind of look old and oxidized. I'm wiping some of that back, and then I go in and add some black wax kind of down in the crevices, like the eye and around its legs. And I love how this turns out. You know, you can definitely wash this wax off. I'm assuming. I know alcohol would probably bring it off if you wanted it back to its original form, but it's an older pan. It just wasn't used that much. You know, I still see these on Amazon. You can get new ones that's almost identical, but I thought this was just really neat to age it up and give it kind of the vintage look that it needs for the age that it is. And that's it. That's all I do with this one. And you can rust these. That would be awesome too. You know, use some cinnamon, the faux rusting, or even real rusting. But you guys will have to let me know, what do you think about just adding a little bit of wax to this and giving it that kind of oxidized look? I love that look. I hope you all are ready for some spring risers and trays because I have quite a few. We're going to start with this little candle holder. It looked handmade. It had some wax on it, so I'm just going to sand that off because I want my glue to attach to the base of this wood box that I have here. So what I'm doing is just using a file, getting that wax off of there, kind of flattening that out, and I'm going to use some Titebond wood glue to attach that to the base of this box. I'm flipping the box upside down because we're going to turn this into a riser. Now I did lose a little bit of footage, but what I did was paint this with that white chalk paint and add a couple little molds. Now I'm adding a piece of cardstock from Tim Holtz. I thought this was beautiful for spring. I'm just going to be using some glue stick to, oh, I forgot right here, I had some bleed through. So what I had to do was go back and put a coat of Mod Podge over the white paint and then repaint it white. So if you put a sealer on old wood, especially these projects from like workshops, not the kind you buy from a store, they have a lot of tannins in them. So if you seal them first, it won't bleed through to your paint. All right, so what I'm going to do is use my glue stick, and I like to put a really heavy coat on there and then put my paper down and use a roller to get it really flat. I find a glue stick works great for a lot of things, a lot of decoupage, especially this really thick paper. Now once I get this on there, I'm going to go ahead and give it a very light brushing of Mod Podge. I don't want to soak this. It's not going to wrinkle like a napkin would because it's super thick anyways, but the Mod Podge is going to give it a good seal if someone wants to sit something on it. It's mostly for decor, but I'm going to go ahead and use that file and get that edge of paper off there, make it really smooth, and that way that we don't have any extra paper hanging over. Now you can use scissors to cut this off, but I find that filing it really makes it have such a smooth edge. Once we do that, I will go ahead and white wax this. What I want to do is white wax over some of that paper to give it a little bit of a dreamy look, because that's kind of what I'm going for with this one, and to get those edges sort of covered. Now I did find that this was a little bright for me. What I ended up doing was taking some of this sage paint and dry brushing it kind of all over to give it a little color and bring out some of the green in that paper. What do you all think of this one? I kind of give me Marie Antoinette vibes, or yeah, probably more of a French provincial maybe, I don't know. But I thought the butterflies was beautiful for spring. All right, so we're going to be using this little wood oval that I thrifted a while back, and I'm just going to add some wood beads to the bottom, give it a coat of chalk paint, and I'm going to add some of this Tim Holtz ruler paper to the top. We're going to use the same process we did before. I love these tiny little risers. They're so great, especially when you're doing photos to sit things on. I actually have a statue sitting on this in my office. I made this quite some time ago and I still use it. And I'm just going to roll that with that roller. It tends to help get any bubbles out. And we're going to sand those little edges off, seal that up with that Mod Podge. And I decided to go ahead and give this a little bit of dark wax, and it really stuck to this. So I had to take some, I think white wax, and get this off to get it not so orangey. So remember, you can do that with wax. You can kind of use each of them as an eraser for the other one. For our next project, we're going to be using a scrap piece of wood and some of these little riser feet from, I think, Hobby Lobby. And I cut these in half, and I'm using part of them on this project and part of them on another project. I'm going to use the Titebond wood glue. It works really well. If you don't have it, use Dollar Tree wood glue. I love it too. I have it on hand as well, and they both work just as good to me. So I do let these legs dry overnight before I mess with them, because they really need a long or decent amount of time to dry to be adhesed, I guess that's a word, really bonded to the wood. Wood to wood with wood glue is insane. So I'm just using my Dremel here to kind of get all those square edges off and give this a little bit more of a softer look. It was easier than using my sanding block. I'm going to use this DAS clay, and we're going to make a little mold to go onto the front of this, and we'll use that Titebond glue as well to glue it on. Once I let that dry, we're going to give this a good coat of black chalk paint. We're going to be using some more Tim Holtz paper. These are scraps I've had in my stash. You definitely can use paper scraps for things like this, especially risers. I'm going to give this a good coat, like I said, of this black chalk paint. I don't know, maybe even 2 coats. Let it dry, and then we're going to go ahead and put that paper on the top using that same glue stick method. Even though some of these videos are older, I am having to voice over them in today, like here in 2024, because some of my videos that I did in the beginning, I didn't know about copyright, or I thought the music that I was using was copyright free, but it wasn't. So to keep from having a copyright, and get this monetized, the older videos, some of them were not monetized because of the copyright. Probably not that any of you guys care about this, but I just wanted you to know I am doing a voiceover on these older videos, and watching them, it's quite funny of some of the things I do now, or that I did then that I wouldn't do now. I mean, some of these are quite sped up, and I'm like, wow, that's really fast. And I don't quite do that anymore like I used to, just because I feel like it, of course, some of it was too fast, and I'm actually slowing some things down when I'm editing this video. So what we did was we added some Mod Podge on top of that, kind of like we did the other one, or the other two, and we're gonna, I think I sanded around that and it left a white edge. So we're taking that black wax and shadowing around that to blend this in. And I am gonna white wax this whole piece to kind of tone that black back. And then I do paint the bottoms of these feet. This was such a cute little riser. I thought it was so fun just to have that pink and black. I thought the pink looked very Parisian, I guess, but it was in my spring risers. Let me know what you guys think of this one. This next one is a little cutting board that, well, it's like an ornament cutting board that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm using the legs from part of the legs from the other pieces that we just used, and we're giving them a coat of that sage paint. I gave like 25 cents for these. I got them like 90% off, and I bought 6 or 7. I was going to use them as gifts, and then I ended up using this one to make a small riser. I'm white waxing it, and this little thing turns out so adorable. What do y'all think of this one? The next little riser is even tinier than this one. I had so much fun making these. I need to make some more. I used game pieces. You'll see them sitting there, and this little block, I think this was a stamp block if I'm not mistaken, and I just glued them on. The game pieces were wood. They were just a colored wood, and like I said, I used some Titebond wood glue, and I glued them on and let that set up overnight. And we're going to add a mold to this. I'm going to use my IOD mold and make a little crown. The crown ends up being a little bit tall, so I just go ahead and get it pulled out, and then I cut off the kind of middle piece of the tip and just leave the cross. Glue that on, and I still have to kind of shape it. That's the nice thing about using clay. You can use it as soon as it's still wet, and you can pull it out and you can mold it to fit exactly how you need it to. Once we get our little mold the way we want it, I'm going to go ahead and give this a couple coats of that beautiful sage color. I was really loving that at this time. I still have some of that, and it is such a pretty color. It's so neutral. It kind of reminds me of Apothecary in the DIY, but this is a chalk paint. So I do give this 2 coats, and I white wax this little stand, and that's it. That's all this one needs. I don't think I did anything else to it. Let me know what you think of this one. This next riser was one of my favorite, and I think I sold this in one of my vendor booths, and I really wish I hadn't have. But it was this mirror, and I took the mirror off and used the round top for this. It's a little basket that you put golf balls in. I did find that out. I didn't know what these were for, but I'm using some hot glue and some E6000 because this has metal and I want to make sure it stays in place. Once I let that dry overnight, then we're going to start some fun with this thing. I give it a coat of black paint on the bottom and the cage, and then the top I'm going to use this kind of old Tim Holtz paper. I painted the mirror white just to kind of, you know, not have the mirror shining while I was recording. It really wasn't necessary, but it will give the paper something to stick to. And I used my bone folder to kind of go around the edge, and it actually started tearing or cutting the paper, which worked out perfect. And then once I got that off of there, I went ahead and tore it off, and we're going to use the same method of glue stick for this one as well. Now you'll see coming up how I kind of fix the whole edge of that paper where it's torn, but I'm still using that glue stick. I love the Craft Smart, I think it's Craft Smart, permanent bond glue stick, and then I love the Recollections. They're very thick and gooey when they come out, so paper really sticks well with them. We're just giving this a coat of Mod Podge, kind of like we did the other ones. I'm going to let that dry thoroughly because I need to get the white edges of that paper blended in with the wood. And to do that, I'm going to use my black wax because remember we have black paint underneath. And I mean, you could use dark wax, but I had the black, so I'm just using it. So I want to give it a little bit of a shadow effect and darken that wood up to blend in with the black cage underneath and the black paint. I'm just wiping that back. I can do that because I've sealed that paper with Mod Podge, so the extra will come off of that. As I was looking at that black cage, it kind of had some of the green showing through, and I was looking at that baby blue kind of paper on top and thought, you know, a little bit of white wax might kind of really blend this piece all together, especially with that underneath. So I went ahead and added some to that. You all, this was a stage when I loved using black and white and the dark wax back to back on top of each other in conjunction, and I still use them, just not as much. This next little riser is so cute and so easy. Don't blink or you will miss it. I have a set of these almost like coasters or little bowls. I don't know. I'm not sure what they are. But I had these older from a different project, beads or legs. So I had 3 of them and I thought, you know, that's all this needs. I'm just going to add them on there with that glue. Add a coat of white paint on the bottom and paint over those legs because they had like some dark on them. I'm going to leave the inside of the little bowl natural. And I just thought this thing was so adorable. And I remember using it to put like little bunnies in. Let me know what y'all think of this one. Like I said, if you blink, you missed it. Now this next one is my total favorite, I promise. It is this little file card holder by Tim Holtz. And I added these little chest wood pieces on the bottom using hot glue and wood glue. Gave it a coat of, I think, the Plaster Waverly chalk paint. I took that little metal thing off because I definitely didn't want paint on it. And then I sanded this back because I ended up leaving the inside of it natural too. And so I wanted the outside to kind of reflect some of that natural. And then I put the metal back on it. I still have this thing. It has cute little things sitting in it. It just is so adorable. Now it's meant for little card files. And Tim actually brought out a line of little files and folders that you could put in this and envelopes that you could alter. But I have things like keys and, you know, little bottles. See there? Isn't that adorable? Our last little riser before we move on to other projects is this little scrap wood. I started painting it white and I wanted to add these little beads for feet. So I used that wood glue and I decided that I was going to paint it pink because I was making a little vignette and trying to alternate colors. So I added the pink paint and then some black wax to kind of tone that back because it was pretty like baby doll pink. And once I did that, I'm not sure if I white wax this, we'll see coming up. But this thing turned out adorable, and I think I have a photo of all of them together. If not, I do have a video of these back when last spring. I started my YouTube channel, it's been a year in December, so anything before that, I think I'm up to like 78 videos. But I plan on putting a lot more videos out this year. I'm super excited about 2024. I have a series in the works. I just left a message for you guys on the community channel. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe. There they are. So I enjoyed making these risers so much. Our next project just happens to be a riser. I meant to separate this, but oh well, it'll be all right. It's a large one, and I used this tray that I had donated, or I think we got this out of a sale or out of a house that we cleared out. But I just put one of those little cage things on the bottom of it. I had a bunch of these, and I was so excited about using them for bases because I just thought they looked so neat. And once I give this 2 good coats of this chalk paint, I'm going to paint it on the bottom and on the top. I think I paint the cage black. I'm going to let this dry really well, and yes, I do paint the cage black. I think I give it 1 good coat possibly. But when I finish painting the cage black on this, I use an IOD transfer from the Brocante. It's this chicken and it is really large. I think I still have another chicken left from that Brocante. I mean, I've had that pad forever and I've only bought 1 of them. That's the thing about IOD transfers or any transfer packs. They really last a long time unless you just, totally use them up. So I start out with the rest or another part of that clock and I put it in that corner, and then I go back later and I put, I think, another piece in the left-hand corner and use some of the wording from the Brocante paper pack or transfer pack, and then I add the chicken on top. Once we add these little words and I get the transfers on there the way that I want them, I'm going to go ahead and sand this a little bit because I want this transfer to look like the paint's coming through it. And to get it that way, if you sand, it'll bring the paint through the transfer and sometimes even the metal, and it'll give it a worn look and kind of like it's part of the piece itself. Now, you don't have to do this. You definitely can leave this very crisp and, brand new looking. I think it's beautiful both ways. Once I do this, I remember when I did this, I used a piece of sandpaper that was way too rough and it kind of scratched my transfer, which a lot of people like that really scratched look. But I found that if you scratch something with a really high grit sandpaper or low grit, I'm not sure which one, if you go back in with a fine one, it'll kind of smooth that out. So I'm just using the white wax here to kind of tone everything back and blend it in, give it more of a kind of a dreamy look. That's what I call the white wax look. And I don't think, yes, I do give this, I remember I just took my brush that had the dark wax on it and just went over it. I didn't add any wax to it. I just used what was on the brush and then wiped that back. And it seems like I used the white wax one more time to kind of get it the way that I want it and just wiped everything back really well. I loved how this one turned out. And this sold right away in my first little hutch area that I had my second booth in. And we're going to start with these little pots from Dollar Tree. You can get these in a pack of 3. They're terracotta. There are so many things you can do with these. We're going to use 2 of them and add a couple of transfers. And then we're going to use the third one for something even cooler. Right now we're just adding some, I think it's Parchment by Waverly chalk paint to these as a coat for our, not transfer, sorry, we're using recycled. This is called catalog paper, and I just cut out a few images that I wanted to use that was kind of in the neutral range. Now I'm using the DIY liquid patina to put these on with. Mod Podge is just as good. The DIY liquid patina is a little bit thinner mixture, so it is great to do this type of work with. I interchange and use Mod Podge as well. I just tore around the edges of these, and when I didn't want to place the image all the way around, but I did kind of want to hit the sides with some, so I found some similar pieces and just tore them and added them where I wanted them. Once I get the images where I want them, I do let this dry. I come back, I sand off the excess just to give it a clean, neat look on the edges, and now I'm just doing a light brushing on the inside. This third pot, we are going to add some E6000, a little bit of hot glue for stability right away, this wood coaster, and turn this into a little base for our cloche that's coming up. Now this cloche coming up is a plastic one from the Dollar Tree. It came with its own base, and right now I'm just adding some dark wax to that same paint. I've given it a little bit of a distressed coat, and I do end up getting this a little dark. I add some white wax, and then I had some clear wax, sorry. Then I brush some of that paint right back over it because I felt like it was just too dark and too distressed. And, you know, there are processes that state, don't paint over wax, don't do this, don't do that. You know what? I just do what I like and what looks good. And I've never had a problem with any of it coming off or causing a problem. That doesn't mean it won't. It depends on a lot of things. So now that I've got this kind of looking how I want, I'm going to go back in and distress it just a little bit with a little sanding block. I'm going to add some liquid patina to seal this in, and then we're going to work on our inside of the cloche. We're going to start with this little fuzzy, furry, I don't know, faux grass covered bunny. But I don't like the very bright green. We're going to tone that down with some paint. It's so easy to tone down stuff like this with paint. I do it on greenery as well. I grab a couple of my folk art paints, just the acrylics in a couple different greens. I think one is like aloe and one is moss. And I just start adding it until I get it how I want it to look. Now you can see the difference in these, and I love the new difference. If your fur mats up on that when you paint it, just go ahead and take a little toothbrush or something, and just brush that back up and it comes back up. Now I'm just using some Titebond as a permanent hold and then some hot glue as a temporary hold for this wood piece and the bunny. The rest I'm just going to use hot glue to the wood because it's lighter weight stuff and it shouldn't go anywhere. At this point, you can just add really whatever you want inside of here, just kind of make a little area vignette. I'm adding some rocks from the Dollar Tree and so on. And now I'm just going to place that clear. It's a plastic cloche back over top of this. And I decided that I really want to put something on the front of it at the bottom. And so I got out my IOD paint inlays, and I found this really cute plant, and I'm just kind of cutting it in half and using mostly the top. And I'm going to use Mod Podge. I really enjoy using clear for these instead of having to use paint, because most of the time when I get ready to do my paint inlays, I've already got the paint dried and I don't want to put another thick coat of paint on, so I just use Mod Podge and it works great. I just follow the instructions, spraying that with water. After I get it stuck down in that Mod Podge, I let it dry really good, then I spray it with the water again, and I pull it right off, and voila, it's that simple. We're just distressing this back a little bit, and then we're going to add a coat of Mod Podge to seal that in. Now, what do you all think of this one? Comment below if this is one of your favorite. Now this next project, we're going to be using these cork-like frames from the Dollar Tree and a printable that I got off of Etsy, and I'll leave a link for that below. All I did was print them out and then cut them down to the 5x7 size or 4x6, I'm not sure. And then I added a coat of the Waverly chalk paint in plaster, and now I'm just taking some tan and gray paint and just kind of smearing it, brushing it a little bit here and there on the frame to give it an aged look. And I did do some distressing. I'm going to add a coat of liquid patina, and these are done. There's also lots of free art online that you can print off yourself as well. Now this next project is going to be this little crate of 6 eggs from the Dollar Tree. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paint the base of this that plaster color. We're going to put some of these book pages on these eggs. And I'm going to be using a glue stick. We are going to use one of the new IOD Antiquity stamps to stamp onto more of the eggs. I'm going to use my Stays On Stone Gray. I'm using the Stays On brand because it dries almost immediately, and since these are round, they're going to be hard to lay on something to dry without rolling. So we're going to go ahead and use the Stays On, and we're going to stamp 2 of the round insignia type stamps on to the eggs. I'm just adding some more of that watered down Waverly wax, antiquing wax, to give it more of an antique look. For the last 2 eggs, we're going to use some DIY paints in several colors in weathered wood, sandy blonde, and prairie gray. I'm trying to make the woods the eggs, Lord, I can't speak. Trying to make them look like they are old wood eggs. All right, so now on the egg carton, I am putting some of that watered down wax just to kind of age it to match the eggs. We're putting some liquid patina over this as a top coat, and it looks so beautiful. Okay, so this next piece is this cute little bunny. This bunny's actually metal, and I'll tell you how I know that here in a minute. So weathered wood for the win for the bunny, and I think I did a little bit of white wax. I think I've missed some pieces here. I think I did a little bit of white wax and then a clear coat of the liquid patina. So I had this little stand that had a little chalkboard thing on it, and I don't know if they came from the Dollar Tree. I got a bunch of them in a bunch of junk. And now I'm using a Dollar Tree pot to stay with the Dollar Tree theme throughout. And this was one of the ones that come in the 3 pieces. So I'm just taking this knife and whittling down this to poke through the hole that was actually in this. It was an ornament. It had a hanger at the top, but there's a little hole underneath. So check your things and see if there's holes for you to put them on stands. All right, so I'm using some Titebond, just all in one, the quick and thick, and I'm using some hot glue too for the temporary hold. And I'm just going to put this through and stick it, make sure it sticks to the top of that plant potter. You'll see. So the hole on this bunny is kind of towards the back, which it does not make it uneven when it's on the stand. But I was thinking about filling that in and drilling a hole right in the center. And when I tried to use my Dremel to do that, I realized this was metal and I didn't want to fool with that, so I just left it. But where the hole is, it doesn't mess with the balance of the bunny. And I did the same thing with the hole at the top. I did hot glue and quick and thick, so the bunny will be there on that stick for a long time. And it was off center there, so because it's still drying. Anyway, so I'm using plaster to paint the base of this and the stick. And I do end up using some dark wax on both of those pieces. So I decided that the base needed some character. So I am using a IOD, one of their texture stamps. I'm not sure what they're called, but they come in a pack of 4 and they are awesome. So I'm using, again, that same stone gray in the Stays On ink, just to kind of put those crackles everywhere that I want for distressing. And then I do the white wax first and then the dark wax. And this bunny is staying in my studio. What do you all think about this bunny? Would you do this? When you find a little character, put a little hole in the bottom of it and stick it on a Dollar Tree planter? Let me know in the comments below. We're using a few blocks that I just painted with some Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. And I'm using this little stencil. Now this bee is from the Brocante IOD Iron Orchid Design Transfer Pack. I am using one of my tools to get it off of there, and then I'm going to burnish that, the back side of that piece from the transfer. I am going to go ahead and sand because I do like to give it a little bit of a distress and show some of that paint coming through. And I do end up giving both sides the same treatment with different bees, and then 2 coats of the DIY liquid patina from Debbie's Design Diary. Now this next block, we are going to do a similar process, except we're going to use these dragonflies from the IOD, Entomology, etc. Decor transfer set. And the color of paint on this is Thicket by Folk Art as well. This is one of my favorite Folk Art colors. Next up, we have this cute little riser, and I think I paid $3 for this, and I'm going to use this Thicket paint in the Folk Art brand, and you all, this thing turns out so cute. And I really did like the brown sort of distressed thing that was going on there. As you can see, it sands very easily, bringing back some of those details. I didn't want it to be real rustic, so I'm going to white wax this now, which gives it another beautiful look to it. I'm just going to put quite a bit of white wax over top of this and then wipe some of it back. I have that gorgeous little glass jar there that's going to be the topper on this. Now, if you don't have white wax, you can always just dry brush some white paint to get a similar effect that this white wax is giving it. So I have this cute little bead here, or ornament, that I'm going to be using for the top of my little glass jar, and it's this black and white and natural bead set. I'm going to cut the black bow off of there and paint this with plaster, Waverly plaster, and alter it to kind of match my project. So we're going to start out, like I said, with the plaster Waverly chalk paint, and we are going to paint over the beads to cover that black, and then we're going to sand it some and add some Thicket, the same color of paint that is on the base of this project. I do end up gluing this jar to the base with some E6000. I let that set up overnight. It worked perfectly. Remember these houses that I thrifted not too long ago in one of my thrift videos? These things became more work than what I thought they were going to be. First of all, reminder to self not to buy something with a lot of windows that you're going to be painting inside of. The red and green paint I was able to seal in with some Mod Podge, so that was one coat. Then I painted them all with, I'm pretty sure, the Waverly plaster. If not, then it was the Waverly white. I had to remove the stickers, and then I used my heat gun to remove the glue and the glitter that someone had put kind of at the tops of these. The next process was, after I did the layer of Mod Podge, the layer of white or plaster paint, I then decided that I was going to paint them some spring colors, and I did that. And I had to be careful when I was also distressing them, because if I distressed too far back, then the red and the green paint came through. So I didn't have any bleed through because I did seal them in the beginning with Mod Podge. We're going to use this IOD Birdsong mold. I'm using the DAS clay from Amazon. I did cornstarch my mold before I started on a couple of these birds, but I remember now that I missed one. I didn't have any problem getting it out. So I am just going to put a mold on each one of these. You'll see I'm using the Titebond glue for the glue to go on these. I'm just going to let these sit and dry overnight before I come back in and paint them a pretty spring color. I didn't record the process for all three birds, but they are on here now, and as you can see, I am mixing two colors of my Waverly chalk paint. One is the color agave, and one I think is the color fern or moss, to get this more muted pale blue. I didn't measure, I just had a little bit of that agave, so I just poured some of the moss into it, or it's not moss, it's celery. I'm sorry, celery. I just poured some celery into it until I got the color I want. So I could have sprayed these outside and saved myself some time, but I just combined it convenient to paint inside of my studio. Now I'm painting this a beautiful vintage tea rose from Decor paint, just to kind of give it another one of those beautiful spring colors. Although it seemed like it took forever to finish these three houses, I didn't really do much to them other than change the color and add a bird. I don't know. I am distressing them a little bit, but being mindful that I can't go too deep or I will have red and green come back through. Waxing and distressing is two of my favorite steps when I'm doing projects. Do you guys like waxing and distressing? Let me know in the comments below. I'm starting out by filling a hole in the bottom of the smaller duck with this DAS clay. I start out with a light coat of the Waverly Elephant chalk paint to give this a base so that when I do what you're seeing now, I ended up painting these with a coat of the Waverly plaster and then sanded back, and now I'm using my Dremel just to hit some spots to make it look like they have nicks of paint out of them. They're chipped a little bit. Once I get the stencil completed, then I can kind of overall look at this and see if I have too many nicks or too much distressing, and I can touch that back up with paint. Don't be afraid to distress and take something like this to your project, because you can always go back in and touch that back up with just a little bit of paint. Next, we're going to use the same stencil that has the striping that you can use for bead stack stripes, or you can use for flower stack stripes, even probably ticking. And I'm using a pale gray paint here. I think this is a folk art gray of some sort. It almost looks like that prairie sage, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I can't be 100%. I did the same thing on both sides, and I'm just taking my sander and sanding a little bit of that striping back to bring some of that paint through and giving it a pretty good distress here. I got this gorgeous set of stencils from Amazon. They're like flower market stencils, great for spring. And I'm using that original paint that I mixed the celery and the agave Waverly together for this muted color. This next one it sits at such a funny angle. The bottom is flat, but the duck or the piece is almost tilted forward. So I had to be real careful when I was putting this stencil on. I ended up using this really pretty green color, and I do apologize because I don't know which green color it was. I do stripe and stencil both sides of the ducks, and I think you'll see that coming up. If not, it will be in the photos at the end. Make sure you don't forget when you have stencils that you can use different parts of them, especially on small pieces that is not going to take a whole stencil. It really comes in handy. Here is the other side of that large duck. I'm just putting this bloom on there. So one side could be more streamlined with just a simpler, just one word. This next project, the bottle is pretty gross. Got some sticky stuff on it. I don't know what's down in it. So I took my alcohol and a scraper and got all that goo, and I'm not sure what else was on there, off. And we're gonna transform this into something gorgeous for the spring, or it can go actually set out all year long. I'm going to start off giving this a good coat with a little makeup sponge of this DIY little black dress. You don't have to shake it. I was shaking it to get some on the lid because I wanted to use just the lid as my paint palette. So I'm just gonna cover this really good using a sponge so I get some texture on this, and then let that dry before the next step. Once that dries, I'm gonna go ahead and give this a clear coat. I just use a Rust-Oleum matte clear coat. You can use Mod Podge, whatever clear coat you have, because I'm gonna paint on this and I don't want to reactivate that chalk paint, or sorry, that clay paint. I saw this gorgeous bottle on Pinterest painted with, I think these are what's called daisies. I'm not 100% sure, and I loved it. It had this black background, and then the white and the green and the yellow just popped off of that bottle. I just looked at the picture and just freehanded it, and of course, if anything was how I didn't like it, I just took some black paint and went back over it and then fixed it. I'm all about that. If you can paint anything, you can go back and fix it with some other paint. Just paint back over it. It's really not that difficult. Don't let it stress you too bad. Just take your time and get it how you want it. paint the whole thing on here. Once you see what's coming up, it'll be the completed painting of the daisies, or like I said, not sure, maybe these are forget-me-nots, I don't know, but I just painted what I wanted on there, and now we're going to do another mixed media step. We've kind of done this before. We're going to be using some alcohol inks, and I wanted to put some gold like we did in the past, but also some green. Now this, where I used that matte top coat, it gave this almost like a chalkboard look on some of the parts of the bottle. You can see that here. I just want to mention that in case you're wondering, what is that white weird stuff? So I thought that we would use this pearl color because I knew it would show up rather than just straight green alcohol ink, because I'm pretty sure on black that wouldn't show up. So I'm just using a little bit of a plastic here to kind of pat this around and smooth it out. I'm going to do that, and then we're going to add some gold to go with this. Until we get the look that I want, I thought about using yellow metallic, but I thought it might be too bright. And I just kind of mix these two together. And once I get it finished, I do tone some of this back with the original black paint, and that's on the bottle, because I framed this out and I didn't frame it out that great on the front, so the black paint will tie this all in. I really enjoy this layering process of putting the alcohol inks over top each other, going back in with that black paint. It just gives such a great look. I know a lot of people don't necessarily like layering, but in the end, you really can tell the details and the time put into it with that layered paint to give it a higher end look or a more artistic look. Once I finished that layering, I thought we would do a little bit of splattering. I don't know if I've done this on this channel, but I'm just taking some of that alcohol ink, pouring it, and getting it on my brush. And I just tap my brush to get the splatters. You can do this several ways. You can use a toothbrush, you can use a flicking motion, but I just tap it and it just does the perfect little specks, and it doesn't get on my fingers or anything else and doesn't make a huge mess. I've noticed that the toothbrush method really makes a big mess, but this one doesn't. To finish this off, I'm going to take the cork or the lid and add some gold rub and buff over that black to give it kind of a, I don't know, a black hammered look. And then I'm just going to pop it in there. We'll seal this up with a matte coat. Add a little bit of ribbon and a bow, which can be removed. And this piece is finished. You guys let me know what you think about this one. Do you like this really nasty bottle turned into a cool piece of art, or something you could actually store small things in if you really wanted to? Our last and final salvage project is this very large tobacco basket. I think that's what these are called. I know a few years ago Hobby Lobby was covered with these. They were very popular, and this one has seen better days. It was also in some trash, and I thought, you know, we could salvage part of this. We could probably salvage a lot more than part of it, but I have a little plan for this. I got this and a broken frame, and we're going to put the two pieces together with some other little pieces of junk to make this into some wall decor. So what I'm going to do is cut everything down except for that big square in the middle, and we're going to keep that piece. We're going to give this a light coat of some very watered down antiquing wax from Waverly. Now, I mean, this is really watered down. This was I've had this bottle for a very, very long time, but it only had a little on the bottom, and I added probably half a cup to 3/4 cup of water. We're going to give that a coat and let that dry. Next, we're going to take this frame. It does have a few cracks. I'm going to take my Titebond triple thick glue and glue those cracks and seal that up so that we can use this frame. But I really wanted to use it even though it is broken. Most of the pieces that's going on this project is quite broken. I'm only showing you one of the repairs, but there were several cracks on this that were not quite as bad as this one. This one I had to use my little clamp it and let that dry, and then we're going to add 2 coats of black paint to this. This is definitely a multi-part, I don't know what you call it, compilation or combination. The next part of this is I got these 2 silver pans. Now they have stickers on them for like $3 and $6. I think they look like they came out of the bottom of something, but these were in the bins at the Goodwill bins. I didn't pay $3 for that, but I got this and we're going to paint this. I'm going to give it 2 coats of white chalk paint. This is going to be a centerpiece for this project. The next piece is this cute little frame. I got 3 of these at the Goodwill bins one time. They've been in my stash, so I'm going to give this a good coat of that black paint, the same color as the frame. These didn't have any backs or glass on them, but I knew that we could use these in some type of project, and this project is perfect. Once this gets dry, we're going to use this as we assemble these pieces together. We've put the frame, that tobacco basket on the back, and now we're going to attach this white panel that I've painted. I'm going to use 2 wood rounds because there's a small lip that makes this kind of shallow and it needs something to attach to this basket. So we use these wood rounds to do that with. We'll use some of that Titebond glue and some hot glue for temporary hold and attach that, let that dry, and then we're going to do a little bit of decoupage on this. I thought this bee image with the scripting would be perfect. It goes with the colors and the frame. So I'm just going to cut out one of these images, tear off a little bit around it, making sure that I only have 1 layer. You make sure you get all the layers off the back. I'm going to use some water and a paintbrush to kind of make it into a circle. I'm going to initially stick it down with a glue stick and then use Mod Podge underneath of it to attach it, using Mod Podge over the whole piece to seal it in. We're going to take the frame, add some E6000 and some hot glue, and we're going to frame that bee and tie this piece in. Now I do end up adding some florals to this at the end after and off camera. You guys have to let me know if you like it without the florals or with, and let me know what you think about this project. I think the frame could have been white and it would have been really pretty too. But let me know what you think about how we saved that tobacco basket. Project is one of those Christmas wall pockets. I've already started painting the edge of this and the handle black. I'm using coal black infusion, so I don't want to have to seal it, and I'm not going to distress this back because there's this red under there. Now, because I'm going to use some of the new decoupage paper, I'm loving that this is already white, so I'm going to use some white to cover up the holly berries. I'm going to be using casement infusion to do that. And I do go ahead, I think I put 2 coats just back to back. I go ahead and do one and then go back in and do the other, and that way it does cover them pretty much so that you won't be able to see them through the paper. To start off this wonderful decoupage journey that I'm doing with this video, I'm starting off with the Botanical Journal blocks. I pulled the rose out of there because I just loved how beautiful it is with all the greens. Yeah, I'm still loving all the greens. So what I'm doing is I'm just tearing off some of the edges so it's not so harsh, so it'll blend in a little bit when I use some other mediums around it to make it kind of blend in with this. Now, to attach this to this wall pocket, you can use Mod Podge, you can use liquid patina, you can use glue. There's lots of ways. I'm using the Paint Couture Decoupage Medium, and I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down. I went ahead and cut that top off of there, and I'm just going to, like I said, put some of the decoupage medium underneath of it and use a little piece of plastic I had laying around. It's like kind of like saran wrap. I think the saran wrap method is awesome, so I'm just going to use that to smooth it on down. What I'm going to do to make this blend better, or to make this piece blend in better, I'm trying to mix up some paints that I think will be similar to the color of the decoupage paper. This is a couple different colors of the Fusion paints in, I think it's Belmont and French Eggshell. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll have those in the description box below. Aunt Bee's Attic also carries Fusion paints. She also has the brand new 7 colors that just came out. I've not used those yet in a video, but I will be using them and let you all know how much I like them. So I'm just kind of adding this as I mix it and tap it onto that near the paper to see kind of how it looks. Once I got it to the color I like, I just went ahead and put it down both sides. Now I will tell you that once this dried, it was not quite the color I thought, but I love how it turned out, and I didn't go back and repaint it or try for a different color. Now I'm just sanding those edges off because I waited to paint the sides after the decoupage paper dried thoroughly, and now I'm just kind of blending in with that decoupage paper. Don't be scared to add paint on top of your paper or other mediums, even things like molds or salt wash, to blend this in, because it usually turns out very, very beautiful. It doesn't seem like it at first, but I promise if you keep going and don't just give up, it will turn out gorgeous. I am drying this some to kind of see how it's going to look around this paper while it's dried a little bit, and that way if I want to add more paint to it in certain areas, I'll be able to do that because it's dried and the consistency. I am looking at this and I don't know what's going on with my light, you all. I know what it is. Every time I turn my hand or my drying tool on, my light above flickers. I have told my husband, he has a lot of electrical experience, and he's like, it's fine. So sorry about the flickering in the video. Alright, so I'm putting the second coat on, and like I said, blending those edges in, just kind of shadowing that or giving a vignette around it to give it a look that just looks good to me. Once this dries, we are going to be using one of the IOD texture type stamps on here. I'm not sure what the name of this one is. I think it is Textures, but I'll have that linked in the description box below as well. We're going to be using this. It's like a crackle stamp, the larger crackle, and some olive green Stays On ink. I love this olive green color. It's so beautiful, and it just really ties in those leaves there with this color. And then we are going to finish this off with some scripting. I have several stamps. Some of them I've removed from blocks that are smaller scripting. I have the Kindest Regards IOD stamp, but I really wanted to use a smaller font, so I pulled out one of my, I think, like I said, it's been removed from a block, this script, and I'm going to use it on here to finish this piece off with the same color of the, I am using Stays On in black. That's right, because I wanted to tie in the black on the handle and on the edge of this piece. Oh, did I tell you all we were going to be trying some new techniques? So this faux cement terracotta greeny pinky look is really hot right now. It's kind of an aged texture look with a hint of pink and a hint of a textury moss. So what I'm doing is I've mixed a couple of just acrylic paints together that I have. I had these colors. I'm trying to use up some of my older paints. So we're putting called a light terracotta color on here. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit, and then I'm going to go back in with some of that original pink just to brush it on the top layer, but not necessarily all over the bird. Because what I want to do is, once I cover this some more to get that mossy look, I want some of that pink to show back through, so it's almost like dry brushing. But I will tell you, the bird was not dry, so some of the terracotta mixed in, which was perfect. And then we're going to add some salt wash because we want a little bit of texture. So I just started by adding it just on top of the bird, especially where it was already wet, to give it that texture. And I'm not sure if I mix it in with the paint, but you could. Like, I could have done that in the beginning. So I'm just taking that wet paintbrush and just adding more of that pink and getting that salt wash mixed in there to get it and give it a little bit of a powder too. I even take my hand and just kind of rub that powder all over the bird. This next step is a mixture of DIY paints in Apothecary, Aviary, and Crinoline. Once I put this on the bird, I do realize later on that I probably should have added another green color to this. I do love how this turns out. You guys will have to let me know in the comment section below what you think about it. What I'm doing here is not completely covering the bird. I want some of that pink to show through, and I want some of that terracotta to show through. I feel like I should have added a little bit more of a brighter green maybe, or a darker green, like stippled some of that on, maybe near the bottom, maybe near the top, where it looks like moss is changing colors. This next project is a box that I already started. I painted it a green color. I think it was one of the DIY paints, and then I just stuck it back in my stash. We're going to use this for one of the decoupage paper, the fronts. I am adding the white casement on the front of this, and I'm going to let that dry. Then I'm going to use that beautiful birdie images on the front of this. We are going to do the same thing. We're going to use the decoupage paper with the decoupage medium underneath of it. While I'm doing this, I do make a mistake. I mess too much with my paper. I pull it up and replace it, and then I end up with a hole. And I rub too hard because I just kept fooling with this. I don't know why, but I end up rubbing too hard with this. I just had this little baggie here. I've been using it. I just didn't want to get up and go get any saran wrap, which was ridiculous. But anyways, you'll see how I end up fixing this, and it turns out better than what I would have thought. It's so funny how, you know, our mistakes sometimes, not all the time, can turn out better than what we had planned with in the beginning. But just stay tuned and see how I fix this hole that I made on the front of this. Now that my piece is thoroughly dried, I'm just taking a sandpaper and just sanding the edges to get that paper off. Alright, so remember the little hole? I'm taking a piece from the ephemeral decoupage, the new ephemeral paper decoupage, and I'm going to use that green 60s label there. I'm just going to cut it and just paste it right over, or I'm going to tear it, I'm sorry, and paste it right over top of that little hole using the decoupage medium, and then seal it in. I'm just poking through my decoupage paper and doing a little audition with some of these. I do end up going with one of the green, I think it's a water spout knob, and I love how it turns out. It just really complements the 60s sign, and you can still see the bird through it. So I just used a screw, put that on there, and then I painted the screw a green to match the color. Now you could leave that silver, either way it looks really good. I decided the box was a little bit too light for my taste, so I'm going to use this sample of the new Paint Couture Black Chiffon Glaze. This medium really ties in this piece because what it does is it gives those black birds a little bit of grounding color, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and do like a vignette frame around the birds with this black glaze. I do kind of wipe some of it off. I don't like to go in full force when I'm doing something. I'm going to go ahead and go around all these edges, and then I'm going to round the corners off, and then just go around the whole box on the outside and on the edges. I don't do the inside. I don't feel like that's necessary, but this little box, I just love how it turns out, and I am keeping this one in my collection, or at least in my home decor for a while. And I'll show you a photo of that at the end of the video as well, where this box ended up at. along with another part of this project. I am also using a baby wipe to do this. It does help wipe some of that back, but once you get it on the paint, it does stay on there. Not all of it if you wipe it back, but the point is the baby wipe just kind of helps blend it in, and you can't wipe all of this away with a baby wipe. It sticks to the color and totally changes the color or the hue of that color. Okay, so remember the project I said I originally mixed the paint for? It is this piece. So I found this piece for $1.99, which was, of course, I thought was ridiculous, but I love the actual structure of it. I love the terracotta pot. I love that there's moss on it, and then I love that there are, or I think that's 2 different wreaths that's attached. Now this had a Michael sticker on it, so I don't know if this came like this, but I love the whole setup of it, and I figured for $2 I could turn this into something amazing. So I took all of that nasty foliage out of there, and I'm going to add some things back in. You'll see coming up, but we're going to use this terracotta pot for that same technique that we did earlier to give it that faux mossy look. Now when I paint this one, I am doing this one just a tad bit different. I am not going to put as much paint on, and I'm going to use a baby wipe or a paper towel to help wipe some of the paint back. This was where my paint mixing was being tested before I figured out the exact color I wanted. It's so funny, once you mix paint and then you put it on terracotta, to me it looks like a totally different color than what the paint mixture is. And I felt like for this to be mossy, it needed to have a warmer tone to it, so that's where the crinoline came in. But I did not stop there. So again, I tried this on the pot and I still didn't like the color. I ended up adding some sandy blonde, which I did forget about to mention earlier with the bird. Like I said, I did this a little backwards, and I do apologize. Generally, I have everything in a perfect line, but today it just didn't end up that way with the recording. So you'll see I add some sandy blonde in here to get the color I wanted. I wanted to leave this in so you all could see that, which I always tell you all that I'm experimenting, and we always have a good time with it. But I did want to leave this in here to show you that it does take a hot minute sometimes for creators, even on YouTube, to come up with the colors that they want, just like you guys at home. Now that we have that paint color the way we want it, we're going to go ahead and start adding some of that salt wash in to give a little bit of grit, a little bit of texture, and a little bit of powder look to it. This piece is going to be going into a cloche. We're going to go ahead and work on some of the inside of this piece. I'm going to be adding some of things that I have in my stash, such as these pip berries. I'm just going to pull them off of this and have them kind of stick up taller into the top part of the cloche, and add some pieces in with this little bird. I'm going to be using some hot glue where it's needed to make sure that these kind of stay in place and don't fall if this piece is moved. When I was looking at some inspiration on Pinterest, I found a cloche that had, I think it was a bunny in it maybe, but it had a piece of rolled up music. So we're going to do that for this one. We're going to get some of my older music paper and we're going to roll it up and make it fit in this piece. Once I found the music paper and got it rolled up kind of to the size I wanted, I just used my scissors to trim it back. I'm going to go ahead and use some of this twine to tie it in the center to make it look kind of like a scroll. And we will be using some hot glue to make it stay in place inside of the little bird nest. We're going to go back to working on this little mossy looking pot. And now that my paint is dry, it's very light compared to what I really want it to be. It still gives a mossy effect, but this is where the dark wax comes in to give it that kind of dirty look, like it's been aged for a long time. So what I'm doing is just putting a little bit on there with a chip brush and then using an old rag to kind of smooth it in to that paint. And it really does help give it that mossy look. So this had some kind of like brown moss on it, but I really wanted to add some of this green moss to it So I started putting it kind of over top of the brown moss, but not completely covering it up. And then I thought, how about if we leave some of this hanging off and then glue some kind of to the edge in the outer area like it's falling down the pot and got stuck. This next project is a box that I had already painted manor green, and then I painted the top of it that casement color. Now I'm going to use this beautiful, I don't know what flower this is, but it came from the journal decoupage, and it looks kind of like a book cover, so I thought I would put this on my box. Now, after I did this, and I'm using the same method that we do with the decoupage, after I did this, I realized I probably should have centered this and then painted a little bit at the top and a little bit at the bottom, but you know what? I didn't, so I'm not going to stress about it. And this piece was fairly easy. It was just a little bit of paint and a little bit of decoupage paper to give a whole different look to just a plain box. Now we're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to go ahead and let this dry, and then we're going to sand those edges to get all that excess paper off so that it gives it a smooth look without those rough edges. I just wanted to mention, if you guys haven't went over to my Facebook page and liked it or followed me, go ahead and go over there and do that. I do post content on there every single day, and I give inspiration, and I also get inspiration from you all. So go on over there and post some of the projects that you're making and let me see what inspirations you're getting, and let me know where you're getting them from, because I am in the same place you all are. I get inspiration from other people. The Facebook page is CozyJunkStudio, along with my Instagram page. I've also been posting daily on those. So CozyJunkStudio on Instagram and on Facebook. Now I'm just taking some of that manor green and going on across the top of that. It will blend in with the back color, and you'll see how I'm going to make it blend in with this aged looking paper. I go ahead and add some of that manor green along the edges as well as the bottom to again blend this whole piece in together. To finish this piece off, we're going to go ahead and add an antique latch here on the front of this. They're very reasonable at Hobby Lobby. I think you get a couple for 99 cents. Once I get that on, I'm going to go ahead and go to the pieces on the back and inside that are the hinges, along with the outer edges, to make this piece look more cohesive and match that antique latch. This next project was so easy, you all. I had this adorable frame, which was almost square, and it was almost the exact size of the cutout from the Country Lane decoupage. So I decided to use that in this really, it's kind of like a maybe 1980s frame, but it just worked out perfect. Now I didn't use a decoupage medium for this. I really just took some glue and rubbed it on the cardboard and then pasted that decoupage paper on top of that glue, and it held just fine for this project. I did end up trimming around the edges once I got it completely glued on there. And this piece is currently hanging in my kitchen. I am in love. Believe it or not, this next project, I saved this from the Goodwill bins. It was in a bin that had been picked over and ready to leave, go back out and be thrown in the dumpster. It still had a tag on the back of it and looks brand new. It is a paper mache deer head. So we are going to be using this as our next salvaged project. You all, people throw away just, I don't understand, but you know, I understand getting rid of things, but this looks brand new. It is brand new. It still had the tag, and it was in the bins and no one wanted it. It was picked over and ready to go out to, I'm assuming they throw everything in the trash after it goes to the bins, because the bins are already stuff that people don't want. Okay, anyways, I'm going to give this a good coat of black paint, making sure that I cover all that paper mache up. We're going to transform this into a gorgeous project. This is so easy and so simple to use in any kind of decor. I will be making it kind of a spring look with a little dark and moody underneath. I've been asked to do some shabby chic, some dark and moody, dark and grungy, and dark and grungy or dark and moody spring. This video has it all. So this is the kind of dark and moody spring piece that I'm doing for this video. What I thought would be really cool for this is to grab a bunch of my IOD transfer papers or images and try to find some that would look really good on this black background and use up some of these. I've not been buying a lot of them, you know, it's even some of the new releases. I have bought some, but I'm trying to go through the ones I have. I don't use them as often as I should, so that's what we're going to do with this piece. I'm going to make this look like the vines are coming up into the rack, the deer head rack. It ends up looking so gorgeous. I don't know if I'm going to keep this or if I'm going to sell it, but I end up using the sunflower and some roses and then some of the purpley flowers. I really enjoyed making this piece and just making these transfers fit in certain spots. What I want to do with one of these sunflowers, and these were the only two I think that I had left, is I want this sunflower to kind of be coming from the side over the nose area. So I'm just trying to figure out how that's going to look the best. And I end up cutting the little green piece off because I don't really want that on the nose. And I go back and cut some of those other sunflower petals off to fill in where I cut the green from. And I also want one of the roses to kind of cover one of the eyes. They'll offset each other. It'll look really cool. Now you all know I don't do a ton of planning or prepping, and things just kind of come as I start working on projects. But I started to put this sunflower down and I knew that I wanted some of those little purple flowers to be coming up the top of this skull or this head. So I had to change plans and put those on first. With transfers, you kind of want to pay attention if you're wanting to do layering, which one needs to go first. Now there are ways you can maneuver and add things in to make them look like they are layered. And I do that a little bit here, a little bit later, because I don't put enough of the purple flowers on to begin with. But I'm starting with these little purple flowers. I wanted to mention something. Once you get these things rubbed on and you go and pull that transfer sheet off, it is recommended that you flip it over and use the shiny side to burnish your transfer. Well, I'm going to tell you more than once I've done that and ripped my transfer off. And I do it here. I flip this over, I go to burnish it, and then one of my flowers, a little piece starts coming up. So I've been trying to take it off and use my fingers to kind of rub things down. Now, if you transfer something on a flat surface and you get every single spot rubbed really, really good, you're not going to have this problem. The problem is this isn't a flat surface. I don't get everything rubbed really, really good on, so it's not sticking 100. And then when I go to burnish it, I'm grabbing what's not stuck and pulling it back off. That's just a little tidbit. Either make sure it's stuck really, really good before you burnish it, or use your finger or some saran wrap to kind of pat it down real good and then burnish it. All right, so now we're moving on to the sunflower. We're going to do the same thing with it. You can see I've already cut that green piece out on it. Generally, when I do curved surfaces and transfers, they pop off so easy, and this did. but because it was curved surfaces, it started breaking apart, so I just went ahead and cut it up and then patched it back on. You can't tell at all that I did that. I was going to be adding some of those flower petals back on top of the cutout portion anyways, but you'll see that some of the pieces are starting to come off but not attached to the deer head, so I cut the transfer itself and just piece it together to make it an easier process, plus not to lose some of my flower, because if you're not careful, if these start coming off and they're not sticking to your project because of the curves, then they might start sticking to each other and you've lost part of your project. So just be real mindful of that, or just cut your pieces apart and do tiny sections, because the transfers look like they're still together and you can't tell you've cut them once you put them back together, if that makes sense. I want to take this time to thank you all for watching my videos, for commenting, for subscribing. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything. Hit the thumbs up button or the like button. It really helps my channel. And again, the comments, I love hearing from you guys. You give me so many neat ideas or afterthoughts or things you might have done differently, or something you might have added to make the project look even better, and I love that. So keep those comments coming. Also, if you watch my videos when they come out, especially the people that are subscribed, it tells me that my subscribers are watching, and because my subscribers are watching and paying attention, that it's pushing my videos out to new people who then get to see the videos too. So I appreciate all of you that are watching the videos, especially the ones that, you know, maybe they're not your favorite, maybe the recycling's not your favorite, but if you watch it or let it play, especially until the end, it pushes it out to so much many more people. And YouTube tells me that. It says, hey, your subscribers are really doing a great job of pushing your videos out. They're watching them till the end. They're really paying attention, and now because of them, you're getting all these other subscribers. So that is all you all. That's not me. So I just want to thank you so much for all of that and let you know kind of how it works, because there are people I subscribe to on here And I tell you guys this in the comments, I get so inspired by other YouTubers and watching their creations, then I go create. And I hear the same thing from you all. You tell me, oh, you've inspired me. And I'm thinking, that's me. I'm you too. I do the same thing. I watch other people. And sometimes they make things that I'm like, I probably wouldn't try that. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and watch this because it's going to push their videos out and they're going to be able to make more videos that I might like better and be able to keep them on YouTube. So if you do that, you just don't know how much I appreciate that. All right, once we get this face done, which is kind of what I've been working on, I'm going to take these leaves and I'm going to take some of the stems of the leaves and I'm going to cut them to form around these antlers. Now, I'm not going to do all of this on camera. I'm going to do just a few and then you'll see the finished project coming back up because we're going to add something, one of my favorite things, coming up. Did anyone guess what it was when I said that? So we're going to be adding some rub and buff to this and it just finishes this piece off. Once we add this rub and buff, I'll just put a matte coat clear sealer all over this and seal it up nice and pretty so those transfers don't go anywhere. What do you all think about the leaves and the vines on the antlers? Now that took me a hot minute, but I loved it. I loved piecing them together to make them look like they were just creeping up and out onto this deer head rack. And then I put a flower kind of coming off that rose and tied in those vines going down into the flowers so it all looks like it's attached. I love this piece and I think this could fit in a lot of different styles, like I said, dark and moody. It could fit really in a girl's room. It could fit in a higher end look, maybe even farmhouse, a little frilly farmhouse. But let me know what you guys think of this one. I am pretty obsessed with it. Oh, and I forgot that clear coat that I use is actually DIY's clear wax. This stuff is amazing. It's like a buttery soft wax, but it dries to a hard finish and it gives just enough of a hint of a clear coat. Not shiny, but not very flat either. This first piece is a part that came off of a desk. It's just some pressed wood and it has this laminate faux wood look on it. I am filling some holes right now with some spackling and then I saw that one of the holes had a little wood dowel in it, a connector, so I had some of those and I went and grabbed a few to fill the other holes with and I ended up using a hammer to kind of hit those in and then fill around with some more of that spackling. Use whatever paint you have in your stash. I'm going to be using DIY clay paint. It's one of my favorites, but I love chalk paint as well. I use acrylic paints as well. So like I said, just use whatever you have in your stash. So I'm going to be using Apothecary here. I wanted to add a little bit of color to our life. Now I just want to let you know, disclaimer, everything's going to have two coats. I put one coat on, I let it dry, then I put a second coat on and I let that dry. I'm sealing everything up with liquid patina. You can use Mod Podge, you can use polyacrylic, whatever you have. Alright, so after we let this dry, we're going to use some IOD stamps and we're going to use some pretty stamps. I am in love with some of these, you all. The first stamp I'm using is the IOD Birds and Branches stamp. This stamp has a painterly effect, like it has been painted with a brush, which gives it beautiful detail in a painterly way. I am using the IOD Stone Gray ink, and I'm using a roller. I like to use a roller and just kind of get it evenly coated on the stamp a couple times so that I can just pick the stamp up and then put it on the paint. I do use sometimes just dipping my stamps in the paint or in ink, but this time I am using a brayer roller, and you can get those from many different places. This happens to be a Tim Holtz one. So I'm just playing around with this stamp, laying down some of the branches and then adding the birds. I only add a couple birds. where I really want them to see how it looks, and then I'm going to add in some leaves here and there to make the whole thing kind of cohesive. Now always remember when you are laying your stamp down is to, once you put it down, hold it there in place, keep one hand on it at all times, and then use the other hand to kind of go around it. Again, you can use a thin mount, which is kind of like a acrylic block, but it's flexible. I just use the stamp itself. It's either way. Sometimes I will use the thin mounts as well. I knew I wanted this larger bird that was flying to look like it was swooping in, and that there already be another bird sitting on the branch waiting for this other one to come in. And then I just went ahead and added the leaves kind of around the birds to make it look like a whole scene. And that is sort of what these are about, all of these wood blocks. They're just art scenes to sit around, be shelf sitters, some little pieces of artwork out of scrap wood. Now let me know in the comments below which one is your favorite, and is this a good way to use up scraps? I took the roller here and I am just rolling ink all over the edges of this, and then I do it on the sides just to give it that kind of rustic. I didn't want to sand back through this because of the color underneath. It wasn't dark enough, so this was my way of kind of distressing it. So now I'm just using some IOD wax in white and in dark. I am putting this all around. I'm putting the dark wax on first because I want it to have a little aged look before I add the white wax to it. So I didn't cover the whole piece, I just covered some areas because as I wipe, it's going to get across all of the areas. So our next art scrap wood junk piece is going to start out with tarnished pearl as the color for its base, and I'm using another piece of scrap wood. This came out of the burn pile from a furniture place that my husband gets scraps from. You all have heard about those if you've watched my past videos. Again, 2 coats of this. After we let those 2 coats dry, we're going to start out with a La Campagna IOD New Spring Release 2023 stamp. I'm using this gorgeous cow that's already on a scene, and we are continuing with the stone gray ink in the IOD. All of these items will have stone gray ink. So I'm just putting my stamp here, trying to see what I want to add to this scene, and this helps, especially where these are on something clear. You can use these to audition other pieces before you stamp them down. Now this next part, I'm going to try to figure out how to bring these two together with some of the stamps that came with this La Campagna stamp set. I'm trying to see where there is more of that ground, and I found it in just using the sheet, and I'm just going to take some of the parts and stamp it together until I like how it looks. Once I finished with this, I still wanted something kind of in between them, almost like at a crossroads. And I decided to find something that looked like I could stamp and make a tree with it. And coming back to that birds and branches stamp, I think that this was what I was looking for. We're going to do the same thing. We're just going to use some of these branches to make it look like trees and add leaves to the trees. I'm making sure when I do this that I'm only putting the ink on the branch part of the stamp of where I want it. Do you all use stamps like this to make things that you don't actually have in your stash? I do. I have always, and I'm pretty sure most crafters do. If you do, comment and put it in the comment section below. Alright, so we're going to use this stamp to go ahead and make us some more trees in the right and left hand corners, so it kind of looks like this came this way. Now to finish this off, we're going to go ahead and roller some of this stone gray in different areas on here to make this look distressed as well. We're going to go ahead and add some white wax to this. And what I did was I forgot to add liquid patina to this first, and the white wax stuck a little bit too much. Now I love white wax, but I didn't want a lot of white wax on this scenery. It's different projects for me requires different amounts of white wax. So what I did was I added some of this clear wax, and I used it just to get some of that white wax back off. This next piece is already aged wood that was cut into a house. It had a little wreath on it. I thrifted it around Christmas time. It looks like they had aged the front of it, or maybe it was just aged already, and I don't know. So we're just going to add a little bit of DIY beadboard to this, to the edges, to the back, and around the sides to make it cohesive. Once we've done that, we are going to be using the new IOD Spring 2023 release Birds and Bees stamps, and I'm going to use this bird that is perched on a piece of wood or a branch for the front of this piece. I'm going to be using the same stone gray ink from IOD. We're going to go ahead and add some of the birds and branches to this off of the birds and bees stamp, not the birds and branches stamp. We're going to go ahead and add one to the top and one to the bottom. This bird ended up giving me a hard time. It dries really light. You can't see that now because it's still dark, but it dries a lot lighter than the rest of the items that I stamped, and I end up stamping back over this to darken it up. I think I have that on video coming up. So what I did was I'm just kind of doing the same thing here. I only inked up the part of the stamp that I wanted to use, and I just laid it down how I wanted it, and then I added another one to the top of this bird. This next piece did the same thing to me. It was a lot lighter than the rest. I almost think I used a different color ink, but the only other ink I have is black, and I just don't think this is black ink. You all. I was a little bit nuts when I was doing this because I couldn't figure out what I did different. Okay, so we're using the weathered wood on this piece of a firewood that came out of the burn pile. And I originally was going to use the weathered wood as the facing where I did a white stamping or cream, and I decided that this was just going to be the sides and the back. So what I ended up doing was using some of this Waverly in the plaster color. It's at the bottom, very bottom, you guys, and it's so thick and yummy. I love it. I wish the whole bottle was like this, but it only gets this way when you leave the lid off like I do. So I ended up scraping all this out of the bottom and using a little bit of water to help it smooth over, and now I have the piece that I'm going to end up stamping. Now we are using this chicken from the IOD Farm Animals stamp. So as you can see, that last one, that chicken was very light gray. So I went ahead and stamped over these, and where I double stamped them, I'm using the zip sander to kind of sand some of that ink back and give it a little bit more of a distressed look. Once I get finished distressing these, I am going to go ahead and go back in and add some white wax to both of them, and then just some of the dark wax to the bird one. I didn't really want it on the chicken one. I don't know why. I guess because it had the dark sides and the dark back. I really loved putting this white wax on this weathered wood on the chicken one. It just blended that front end so well with this one. Is a really small piece of scrap firewood that I'm using the apothecary paint, and these pieces, just to let you know, they're not straight by no means, and I'm not worried about that. Like I said, these are like little scrap pieces, and I'm going to put them in my booth for a few dollars, but it gave me some therapeutic painting and just some easy to do projects while I'm preparing for the more detailed projects. So I'm just going to apologize right up front because I'm misstamping that pig on that piece of wood. That is from the new IOD 2023 spring release of the same antiquity stamp. That stamp set is, I just love it. So we're just using the roses that come from that set, and we're going to put one on each side of this little piggy and do the same steps we did before. We're going to roll that ink around that block and on those edges just to make it look, again, more distressed. We're going to go ahead and add some of that antiquing wax. I think I put a coat of liquid patina on this, which is a clear coat, but I am not sure, to be honest. It looks like I did, but we're going to go ahead and add that antiquity or that dark wax and then some white wax over it. And this piece is the last piece, and it is finished. This first project is an inspiration piece from watching Heather over at Create Your Own Cozy. She has a paper line that she sells for JRV or Jamie Ray Vintage. Her bunny papers sold out immediately when she done her video. I'll have that linked below. Go check out Heather's channel over at Create Your Own Cozy and see where I got my inspiration for this project. So what I've done is covered up that pineapple with some white paint. Now I'm adding a super thick coat of Mod Podge, and I'm going to be doing the iron-on method with a decoupage paper. What you want to do is get a really good thick coat, let it dry, then bring it back, and we're going to use the recycled bird ephemera. Like I said, I have this here already in my stash, and I'm going to be using one of her bunnies to go on this. So what I did was cut out the part that I wanted to go behind my bunny, and I'm going to take my nail and just kind of go around the inner edge of this frame, give it a little line, and cut that out to use as my background. Once I get this cut out, then I'm going to use my little mini press and a piece of parchment paper to go over this, and what I'm basically doing is getting that Mod Podge wet again by heating it up underneath of the paper, and it gives you no wrinkles. You guys, I love this method. And what I'm going to do is use this bunny from Recycled's Spring Project Blocks. Now you can get these at Aunt Bee's Attic. I will also have a link for those in the description box below. So I don't want to be able to see anything behind my bunny when I put it on my other background. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a quick coat of just this off-white paint. Now some people use white, but I don't want mine to be that bright. So I'm going to do this and let this dry, and then to save myself wrinkles, I'm going to do the same type of iron-on with this bunny. Once this paint dries, I'm going to take my Mod Podge and put a very thick coat on the back of this bunny and let it dry. Once it dries, then I'm going to iron it on top of the other paper, and I'm not going to put any wet Mod Podge on top of either of these papers because this is going to be a piece of art. No one's going to be touching it, so I'm not sealing it, and because I don't do that, I won't have any wrinkles. It is perfectly smooth. So if you don't need to seal something, this is the best way to do it. Use Mod Podge on the back and do the iron-on method. If you have questions about that or I didn't explain it properly, just drop them in the description box below. So I'm just going to cut these feet off my poor little bunny because I want him at a different stance. Now you're seeing that I'm reactivating that Mod Podge that I put on the back of my bunny, and it's going to stick to my paper. And now this project is done. Let me know if you're getting inspiration and what you think about this first one. Continuing on with the inspiration, this next two projects is inspired by Susie over at SusieOnTheFarm.com. She also has a YouTube channel, Susie on the Farm. She just did a video of all these different candle holders and risers, and they were so cute, mismatched, paint different colors. I will have her link in the description box below for that video as well. So I thought that I would go ahead and give these a couple different colors of paint to go with our bunny and whole spring theme. So we're using this petticoat pink from DIY. I sell this line in my booth, and I thought I would use the pink to bring out the pink in that bunny photo or piece of art. And then we're going to use this green paint. Another inspiration, Heather used the gypsy green from the DIY line. I'm using the Fancy Farm Girl. It seemed to go with my bunny better. So I'm giving both of these a good coat of this. Then we're going to seal them really well with some matte clear coat. Use whatever kind of clear coat you want. I'm going to let that dry very well. And then we are going to do something I haven't done in a long time. I want to take this time to say thank you to all of my subscribers for all the comments you guys leave on my videos. It means so much to me. I love reading through them. It's how we keep in touch. I try to answer every single comment. If you don't want to comment, leave an emoji. That is wonderful. Or hit that like button. It really helps my channel, and you guys know I appreciate it very much. And if you don't know, I'm telling you right now that I do. Also, if you are new here, welcome. We are so glad to have you. Thank you for joining all of us people who love our junk, and our junk just makes us feel so cozy. That's what this channel is all about. I love junk. It makes me feel cozy. It is my zone, and I am so happy you guys have joined us in it. I love to create. I love to thrift. I love to upcycle, recycle, use things and turn them into something different or newer looking, or maybe a new style. I was raised on junk. That's how my parents raised us. They had a thrift store. You know, it's just in my blood. It always has been. And this channel is my outlet for that, and to meet other people who are like-minded, that love to thrift and love to upcycle and recycle. All right, so if you guessed it, we are going to white wax both of these candlesticks. Now, I love the way that this white wax gives this pink more of a classic look and less of a pinky pink. And I also love the way that it turns this green into a gorgeous muted green. Now, I love the green before we white waxed it for sure, and use this color without white waxing, but it's gonna go so great in our vignette. Wait till you see. It's been a while since we've done a vignette on this channel, and this video is the video. We're getting back to basics. We're doing thrift flips. We're doing colors that coordinate and having a vignette at the end of the video, so just wait and stay tuned. I can't wait for you all to see the next project coming up. It's a sweet little project. I'm so excited. I've had it in my stash for a while. I have been shopping my own stash using things that I have. Now, I have still been thrifting maybe once a month, but I've really been trying to use up products that I have had for a long time, and I won't be repurchasing, but they are still good products, and using stuff out of my own stash. I know a lot of other people are doing that right now in the YouTube world, as well as you guys at home. You know, we have a lot of things that we just overlook in our stash or that we're not using. Go get them. Use this video for inspiration. It may not be your color, it may not be your style, it may not be you want to do a spring project, but get inspired. Get creating, because it brings us so much joy as creators and is so therapeutic. All right, let me know what you think about these candlesticks. Do you love the colors together? Do you love the white wax? This next project is a gorgeous little brass lantern. I'm calling it a lantern. I don't know. I've never seen one of these. Let me know if you've ever seen one. I've had this in my stash, and I knew that I wanted to keep it. It's got a little mirror in the bottom of it. I'm sure it was a candle holder maybe. If you've seen one of these, or if you know it was maybe something that had a candle in it, let me know in the comments below. We're going to add some sweet little things to this to make it so gorgeous for spring. And I'm not gluing anything down because I don't want to ruin the integrity of this. So what I'm going to do is start out with this little mini pot that I got from Michael's. Now, these are much tinier than the ones from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to age this up with a little bit of white wax, just taking some and rubbing it on with a brush, and then of course wiping it back a little bit. It just kind of gives it that whole aged terracotta look. And you could take this step a little bit further and add like some watered down brown paint, or some Dixie dirt, or some real dirt, or you know, a lot of products they make out there to make things look aged and dirty. But I'm just adding the white wax to it, and I'm going to lay this on its side and put a tiny little bird cage. Geez, it's late. Y'all, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I have not been off work that long. I did have a comment. Someone said, "Are you a nurse?" And I know I've told you guys before, yes, I'm a nurse. I did psychiatric nursing for years and ER nursing. I did it all really, but now I do 24-hour nurse line and I love it. I get to work from home. And I used to be a cosmetologist. When I was 18, I got out of high school. I went and got my license and did that for a long time. So I've had more many hats. I've worked in factories. I've done it all, waited on tables. Okay, so back to this project. I am putting a little set of flowers that were already glued together that came off another project. This cute little porcelain bird that came from Hobby Lobby. They have these right now in the same color, the same exact bird, and they have them in navy and olive green. I bought some. I already had the white one. I've had that one for about 2 years, and they've got them out again this year. So they're only $1.70 a piece with the 40% off of spring right now. So go grab some of those tiny little birds. I put those cute little eggs in there and another little flower. And then I'm going to add some beautiful crochet ribbon from Dollar Tree and make a big bow. And I think this just turned out so adorable. You guys will have to let me know what you think of this one. I'm so excited about this next project, you all. I've been excited about all of these, but I wanted to take this little wreath, and as much as I love it, and I have used it in vignettes and things, I needed the base for what I've got in mind. So we're going to take off the existing greenery on this, and it gives us this really, really flat grapevine wreath that we're going to use to make a gorgeous piece that I'm going to be using in my own home and for staging. So what I'm going to do is grab a bunch of little pieces of greenery. I have a big bag that I keep of just extra parts, and we want to put different colors, different styles of pieces of greenery on here to get the look that I'm going for. Basically, what I'm going to do is just start sticking pieces of this, random pieces, random styles, in and around the little wires that are holding this wreath together. I'm not really going to glue much of the greenery. I will be gluing some moss coming up, but we don't want to cover the whole thing. We want some of the wreaths showing through for that aesthetic, and then we also want these pieces to kind of be sparse, and again, more of, one type of plant and then a different type of plant and so on and so forth. You'll kind of get the idea as I keep going along doing this. Once we get the pieces that how I want them, and I feel like I've got enough greenery on there, I am going to be hot gluing the moss because there's just no way around it. It's not going to stay on here for the project I have in mind. Now that I've gotten the greenery mostly how I want it, I know it still looks pretty sparse, but we're going to go ahead and start adding in some of this moss, and I am going to be just gluing random pieces of it into the areas that I want it. With the moss, you want to have some on the top of the wreath, and you also want to have some glued kind of to the edges, again, just in kind of random places, because we don't want this to be completely covered. We want to be able to see some of the side of that grapevine wreath. The top's not going to matter too much with what I've got in mind, but I want to be able to see some of the grapevine on the sides, but I also want to see the moss kind of hanging over the edge of the grapevine wreath. So I'm just being mindful with that whenever I'm gluing my pieces on. So I wanted to include some kind of a rusty color in my vignette and bring out some of the color of that bunny. And I remember I had this gorgeous urn. I love this color. I'm not doing anything to it. I think it's beautiful. I made my wreath to lay on top of it and to put a bird nest in. Now I'm not going to glue any of this down. Like I said, this is going to be just for my viewing and for staging. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of moss inside of my bird nest. I'm not gluing it either. You know, this is not going to be moved around or anything that's going to need to be glued. And then I'm just going to lay some of these birds' eggs. These were styrofoam, and I had painted a bunch of them up and just speckled them with some brown paint to get them, you know, kind of the color I wanted. I've done, you know, even some blue ones, but we're going to use neutral ones for this. And you guys will have to let me know what you think about this. I am in love with this. I can't help it. It's just gorgeous. And now it is time for the vignette videos. I so enjoyed doing this video and look forward to many more. And I will see you all in the next video.